Pulisic dentro, Rafa. Gol! Ebram! Gol! È l'azione più bella del mondo! È l'azione più bella!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SempreMilan podcast. I'm your host, Ollie Fisher, joined once again by Anthony Torgrud.
I'm here. Yay, woohoo.
And we've got the return of the Mad.
Yeah, I feel like this is probably like my 12th time returning after a long absence. So we'll just, come back for a few weeks and then disappear for another 4 months.
Yeah, reoccurring guest.
Sounds like Milan, that really. Show up once every 2 months and give us a bit of hope that it's going to become more regular. At least you came back to cover a good game, eh?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
good for
Anyway,
somebody.
Before we dive into this week's episode, as always, got to say thank you to our Substack founding members. Going to go backwards again, fuck it. Medicate, Ken, Roberto Racinos, Marco Villela, Tarek, JT Physio, Mike Schulz, Heavenly 13, Derek Favretto, Merlin Finker, Nasser Carlo Fassi, Rajat Raul Escobar, Luke Villano, Mats, MJ Kemin, Joey Gola, Moritz Pullman, Tito Matt, and Des Windsor McGlynn. Thank you for all the support you show us over on the Substack. If you're unfamiliar with it, I do these plugs every week, so people are probably getting bored of it, but that's the place to go for the premium content that we offer over at SempreMilan. You can try a week for free, and in the last week, you would have had things such as pub chat from Lorenzo and Stefano, which was underrated legends of AC Milan. They go through some of the players who were perhaps not talked about in the upper echelons with Baresi, Maldini, Nesta, stuff like that, but have played an integral part in some of our past successes. The bonus podcast that me and you did, AJ, towards the end of last week was basically an update on the sporting director pursuit, or I guess addressing the lack of updates, because we went from Paratici to Iglitare and then to Tony D'Amico. So we went through who's the better of the candidates, and we also spoke about some of the tasks that they will have to tackle. There was an audio bulletin which was released from the archives. I actually recorded something back in January. It was an hour-long rant from me, just into a microphone, about all the problems that I see at Milan from top to bottom. I went through each layer of it and what's going wrong. Probably don't want to listen to an hour of just me talking, but if you're a sadist in some way, then go check it out.
you already did it on the podcast, so
I know.
Yeah. The final thing to plug is the newsletter, Parting Gift at Stake, which Isaac constructed, of course, around the idea of us potentially going on and winning the Coppa Italia, and that could be the last thing that Sergio Conceição contributes for us, which would, of course, result in a European spot. And in that is the bulletin, which is all of the main stories from the website from over the past week, if you're not able to catch up with everything every day. Okay, boys. Easter Sunday. Atalanta at home.
Oh, I should probably.
I do think
you're going to
was on a little side for this one. I was expecting it to be way worse, to be honest.
Yeah. We spoke about needing divine intervention and for our stars to rise, as Jesus supposedly did on Easter Sunday. Didn't happen. we go. He did, yeah. Yeah, he did.
Was that the following day, though, or was that Sunday?
No, that was Sunday, wasn't it? I think we found out Monday morning, but I think it was Sunday, wasn't it?
If we found out Monday morning, it would be like Monday afternoon in Italy. I guess it depends on when they announced it.
Yeah, I don't know, but I thought it was.
I'm sure it was announced yesterday morning. Because
Yeah,
they postponed the games on that day, and they would have postponed ours if it happened on Sunday, surely.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it could have
anyway, whatever.
This isn't the Sempre Pope Death podcast, so.
It kind of is. It's going to be relevant a few times on this episode, actually.
Yeah, it will. If that were the case, we'd only have to record one every few years. So maybe that's our new niche. But yeah, anyway.
That's why I'm here, right?
Yeah, our correspondent. So we played a 3-man defense against Udinese the previous Friday. And we scored 4 goals and we didn't concede. It was our 4th clean sheet under Sergio Conceição. Therefore, as we mentioned in the preview, AJ, it was basically an obligation to carry on with the same system. You're not fixing something that not only isn't broken, but worked incredibly well. There were a lot of positive signs that came from that game. Pavlovic and Tomori looking good as outside centre-backs. Gabia doing well as an anchorman. Reinders Fofana doing well in the middle. Teo and Jimenez looking like natural wing-backs. And then you've got Leao and Pulisic looking good, pushed a bit further up the field. And, Jovic, even though he didn't have a goal involvement, you couldn't really hammer anybody with criticism, especially after a 4-0 win. But we did also mention that it was going to be a much tougher test against a team that know a 3 at the back formation very well, given that Gasperini has used it with Atalanta for years. And we were to find that out to be true. However, I think this is a really, really strange game. I'm almost apathetic about the outcome of it, because we know that the league season has been dead in a ditch for a long time now.
Yeah.
I just feel that we were a tad unlucky on the balance of the game to lose this one. Look, there's games this season where you can say we were a bit lucky to get the 3 points. That comeback against Parma. We've had several comebacks where we've been in bad situations and we've got ourselves out of it. But yeah, in this one, I just feel like, in the first half, they pinned us in a little bit, but I also feel like it was a ploy from us to soak up the pressure and try hit them on the counter, which nearly worked a few times. Then in the second half, we conceded the only goal of the game after our best bit of play. So it just feels a bit shit.
I thought it was an awful game. This didn't look like the same team that played Udinese. Obviously, the opponent's caliber is totally different, but it seemed like everything they realized in that game, they forgot for this one. There was a moment right before halftime where they showed the possession stats of the last 30 minutes, which at this point would have been like up to the 11th minute or 12th minute, something like that. And we had 18%. And I had the FOTMOB momentum thing up right now. And sure enough, there are 0 Milan ticks on it from 12 up till 42. So 30 minutes. Yeah, exactly what they were saying there, which is unacceptable. I don't care what position you're in. If you're in 20th, 9th, 10th, 1st, you should never have no momentum for 30 minutes, especially in the opening half of a game. It's just not okay for me. I don't feel like we actually did anything. I felt like we sat back and waited for a counter, but didn't press. I mean, the only time you saw us putting on any pressure was when they were in our final third. We never went for the ball. We waited for them to make a mistake and then thought we could capitalize, but we couldn't because, again, we were seeing stagnant plays. When we get the ball, the person on the ball doesn't move. They wait for someone else to make a run, and no one's making a run. No one's moving. So then they're forced to just stand on the ball, and then they take a couple steps, and they make a shitty pass to someone who's semi-open but never tried to get actually open. Then, of course, it's intercepted. So it was more of the same, just in a different formation with different players this time. I have nothing positive for this game.
I feel like when you play 3 at the back against Atalanta, it's basically playing 5 at the back when you're on defense. And we basically just wanted to park the bus and try to win 1-0, and it didn't work.
Here's the interesting thing, I guess. First of all, my observation is that we were set up so deep and compact, and as you say, AJ, we were not aggressive in the press at all. We sat in a deep block, at best a mid block, when they were passing it around their back 3. I think that was entirely deliberate. I think we were happy to let them have 80% of the ball. Now, that brings on a separate debate of should a Milan side ever play like that at home against anybody? Is it cowardly? I think Conceição has weighed up the limitations of this team and how bad the defensive record has been. And I think he's used this as a bit of a trial run for Wednesday night. I think he has basically said, you have the ball, try break us down. We'll see how organised we can be when we play basically like a 5-3 block. And we gave them very little. We gave them a lot of the ball, but we gave up very little in terms of scoring chances. And the 2 big chances of the half went to us. I know what you're saying about stagnant, but we were stagnant when we were in possession, without a doubt, and they managed to get retreat into position a little bit. But in transition, we caused them big problems. There was that one where the ball came from the right side where they coughed it up into midfield, and then Reinders plays that through ball to Leao, and he's in behind, The Scudetto season, Leao gallops away and finishes that. And yet he just didn't seem to have that same, taking the ball in stride and accelerating beyond the defensive line. Of course, there was the one where he was flagged offside despite being in his own half. But again, he managed to get in behind. We were getting a lot of space in behind the wing back Zappa Costa because Bellanova was playing as a right-sided centre back, which he ended up doing a good job on Leao in the end. And then you've got the Luka Jovic chance where Jimenez plays that ball into him inside the box and he turns onto his left foot and lashes it wide. So we could have been 2 or 3-0 up. We could have been 2 or 3-0 up at half time. And then we're talking about what a master plan from Conceição, you know? But it's kind of like the theme of the season. Who do you blame? Do you blame the individuals, the players for making the mistakes and not executing correctly? Or are we blaming the coach for the approach? You know,
I think it's a little bit of everything, right? It's just the team's overall mental and physical form is not there.
Yeah, I think the players
I don't think that Conceição is a coach who is going to like mentally get the players playing their best when they're not like physically in their best form.
Yeah, I think the players are feeling exactly what the fans are feeling. They're just over it. They're waiting for the season to end.
Yeah.
They're calling me right now. They're just kind of like whatever.
Going
the
through
seasons
the motions.
exactly. They're here. There's games they want to win. I'm sure they're going to show up for Wednesday night's derby. We've seen that all season. That's the only game this team seems to care about, and unfortunately, each performance is getting slightly worse. And now that we're at the second consecutive draw, and it was a come from behind draw this time instead of a dropping, I think.
No,
Wednesday
we went
might be a little
ahead.
tough.
Talon scored first.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Okay. We just conceded the equalizer earlier because last time it was like 30 seconds and then this one was like 60 something. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But still, I think that's the only game they really are getting up for right now. So, we'll probably see something better on Wednesday. Obviously, the opposition's a lot better too, so we might not, but I think they're going to at least show more effort. It's just, I'm looking at these stats here. If you want to go over them, I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, I just brought up the stats graphic for those who are listening and not watching, and there's a lot of blue on the board, without a doubt. Despite having, I think they had over 60% possession in the first half, but largely because of the first 15 minutes of the second half where we had them on the ropes without creating anything massive. Like there was a lot of balls into the box that caused panic, but not an awful lot in terms of shots on target, as you can see. But they just edged possession with 52%. There's a bit of a gulf in the XG, 1.83 in their favour to 0.62 for us. They had 2 big chances to 0, which I guess would be the goal and that Lookman counter late on where he cuts inside and Maignan saves. We have more total shots, although it's 12-11, so negligible difference. And they had 2 shots on target. They scored with their first shot on target to our 1, and we had 7 corners to their 5. And I don't. The layout's changed there. I don't feel like you can necessarily pin a defeat on set pieces, especially in a 1-goal game like this. But when we had that spell of pressure and we got multiple corners in a row, Christ, there were some bad deliveries. There's some awful set pieces in there. Teo failing to beat the first man, and doing those short corners where nothing ends up happening other than a cross that flies over everybody or again gets cleared at the near post. You get 7 corners. You've got to try and find a way to get a chance out of them.
And that was the issue, was 7 total corners. Chukwueze took 1. He took it short, led to nothing, went all the way back to Maignan. This was late in the game. Teo took 4 of them. Beat the first man 1 time, and it still went out for, I think, a Reinders long-distance shot who hit the first man. And then Pulisic had 2, which were decent, but ultimately went to no one as well. Pulisic's the only guy on this team who knows how to take a corner kick. It's blatantly obvious. Teo is not a good corner taker. I don't know why he's the guy who's on them, and I don't know why we're settling now for outswingers. It's when Pulisic's been taking in swingers, he scored at Olympico. He's been objectively the best corner taker on this team in probably the last 5 or 6 years, and every coach has recognized that, being Pioli and Fonseca, except for Conceição. For whatever reason, under Conceição, he's not taking any, and I don't know if it's because he wants him on the top of the box to get those rebounds and hope for a long range shot, which also makes no sense because that's not something he's ever specialized in doing either. But it's frustrating to see the one part of our game that has worked all season be changed to something that's so much worse. And it used to be, the last 10 years from 2015 up until maybe 3 years ago, you get a corner kick, you just assume that that's a wasted chance for Milan, right? But then this season and last season, you felt, okay, we could do something from a corner kick. We got
Beginning of the
guys like,
season.
the beginning of this season. You got guys like Pavlovic who've been finding the back of the net, Chow, Gabia. I mean, even like Teo and not Teo, Liao have been finding corners or headers from corners and finding goals from Pulisic in swingers, and then all of a sudden we just changed it, and it's a wasted chance again. If you don't score on the break, you will not score because this team doesn't know how to take set pieces. Even with as great as Pulisic is on corners, we have no one on free kicks. Absolutely no one. So it's just a mix and match of who can we fool with some crazy set piece involving 4 dudes, and the answer is no one. No one gets fooled. So this team needs a lot more help than's available. Honestly, it's weird. On paper, this is one of the better teams we've had, at least in my lifetime. You know, my time as a fan, and in the last 10 seasons, we've never been in a worse point position than we are right now.
That's gonna be. I'll give you a little teaser, everybody. Another reason to go to the Substack. That's gonna be the theme of the bonus episode for this week.
So,
our worst ever season in 10 years.
Stay tuned. Yeah. Well, it's going to be a bit of a ranking type thing, you know, in terms of where the squads have performed versus expectations, because, you know, that 2014-15 team finished 10th, so 1 place lower, but
the points after 33 games, they had more.
Yeah, and there was a lot less investment in that team. You know, we're looking at a team that cost over 200 million to assemble here. I think one of the big differences between the two coaches that we saw as well was proactive versus reactive substitutions. No substitutions from us until the 75th minute. Of course, we're behind at this point. He throws on João Felix, Tammy Abraham, and Ricardo Sotil in a triple sub. Jovic, Jimenez, Alejandro Jimenez, and Christian Pulisic coming off. But 3 minutes before Atalanta took the lead, Gasparini went with a double sub. Ruggieri, Toloi, and Kosunu came on for Cuadrado, Zappacosta, and Jimshiti. And with that, he moved Bellanova up to wing back and put Ruggieri on the opposite flank. And it was both of those who partook in the goal. You know, I think he sensed that Bellanova had posterized Teo in that first game of the season when he was back at Torino, and sensed a bit of a weakness there. But yeah, that's it. If something's not working, he sensed that they were under immense pressure. He made 3 changes, completely altered the structure of that team, and it yielded a goal almost instantly. And we then took nearly 15 minutes to respond with changes of our own. I think it just lends to the fact that you've got a manager with a clear plan of how to get the best out of his team. And if that's not working, he's got a clear backup plan to go to. Whereas our manager just makes shit up as he goes along. I'm sad to say.
Yeah, and again, you see the complaining at full time of, you know, oh, they've been talking about me since my first game here. It's like, yeah, it's because you're losing games. That's why people talk. Yeah. You know, they're going to talk about you if you win too, but it'll be nice things. But don't complain when you get it all wrong. I mean, like,
if you didn't
at what point does he take accountability, though? You know, that's my issue, is this mentality monster that we hired.
We knew
he's just
what he was, though. You know, we knew that he was going to be someone who came in and like gave the players a hard time too.
And that was fine. It worked immediately, but then it failed, and he can't change it.
If he's got a problem,
Fonseca too, though.
Yeah. If he's got a problem with the Italian media speculating about his future, maybe first of all, don't take a job in Italy, and secondly, don't take a job where you've got a 6-month break contract, break clause in your contract.
Yeah,
because then you know that you are going to be in the headlines based on your performances, and that the newspapers are going to say, oh, well, you know, they won the Super Cup, but it was followed up by a draw at home against Cagliari. You know, that's a fuck up. Ultimately, we couldn't afford to drop points in the league, and yet we did it time and time again. Of course, they're going to talk about whether you're here at the end of the season or not, especially with all the sporting director stuff. You know, I think he's sort of trying to balance this act of playing the tough guy, but also playing the victim. And in the meantime, it's getting tiring, and the results are not backing up anything that he's doing.
You can't be both. There's no such thing as a victim tough guy. You know, the tough guy, when he is a true victim, pretends he's not a victim. That's how tough guys act. You know, like it's a common wrestling trope. You know, everything is WWE, and he's trying to be both, and it doesn't work.
And also, it's this I'm not here to make excuses. And then every
But
press conference rattles off a load of excuses about why he doesn't think he's been able to work.
And also,
his
he
way.
played in Italy. It's not like the media changed over the last 40 years. Nothing in Italy's changed over the last 40 years. He knows exactly how the media is. But even after this game, he came in talking about, oh, they talk about my future, want to discredit me. I've only been here a few months. It's like, yeah, but you've had 30 games, roughly. And he's like, I've won trophies in my career. You've won nothing of relevance. The Portuguese league is nowhere near the Serie A or the top 5 leagues. Yeah, you could say it might be 5 sometimes, but let's be real. There's a huge gap between the first 3 leagues and the 4th and 5th, let alone the 6th or 7th, wherever it's at currently. So, I mean, to say that, and then, yeah, you won the Super Cup when you were sick after 2 games, arguably a fluke. The team's been shit ever since.
Yeah.
If he's content with that, fine. Go about your way at the end of your 6 months, but I'm not content.
There's a job at Torino for you. If you're happy with that, I'm afraid. I was looking at the stats as well. I know we've spoken about this a little bit before because we did a bonus pod on whether there were some regrets about the head coaching situation. But Fonseca won 12 of his 24 games with 6 draws, 6 losses. It was a points per game average of 1.75. He got 42 points out of 72 available. We scored 44 goals under him and conceded 27. Conceição's won 11, drawn 5 and lost 8. We've conceded 30 goals and scored 37 under him. It's 1.58 points per game, which is obviously inferior to Fonseca. And it felt like it was harder to do that, to be honest.
Yeah,
like,
everything got worse
how
under
could it
him.
get worse?
It's just wild. I mean, even the performances, right? Like when we were bad under Fonseca, we still had probably 3 or 4 really good performances at first derby, the Real Madrid game, maybe another one in there that I can't remember. The Leverkusen loss, we looked incredible. There were quite a few decent games. Like the preseason was phenomenal every game. Obviously, that's a huge, you can't really factor that in, but still, like it showed that there was something there. We've had 2 good games under Fonseca. One of them was a come from behind victory to win the Super Cup. I don't even know if it was a good game. I just remember being so elated that we won it. Yeah, I'm sorry. And then the other was a 4-0 against Udinese, who, no disrespect because we've been awful, but they're a worse team than us.
They're on the beach.
Yeah, on paper, in reality, everywhere. Everything about Udinese is exactly how it should be right now. So beating them 4-0 is not impressive.
If this was the beginning of the season, he'd be gone. But because there's only 5-6 weeks left or so, like he's
just got to write it out.
There's no point in making a change now because we can't we might mathematically be able to make Champions League, but we're not, right?
Yeah.
No. And also like the idea of Massimo Ordo stepping up to be the interim has gone out the window because the Futuro have won, I think, 3 games in a row. So like he needs to stay there and get them out of the shit. There's no point promoting him, because it destabilizes that. Conceição said something interesting in his pre-Inter presser. He got asked, "How are you? Are you feeling nervous? What do you think about your journey at Milan?" And he said, "I'll talk about these things at the end of the season, about everything that the 6 months of work have been, about what we did well and what we didn't do well." He's sort of hinting that he's going to do like this tell-all interview when the season's done. Mate, it's not your story to tell. The story that you tell is your results and the shit. So I'm just fed up of it now.
I am curious about like the decision making at the club, and like I don't know how deep he's gonna get with a tell-all, but I am curious.
But like, to do it right, but
I'm sure that even if he has something, he's still gonna do it. He seems like someone who's like, "Fuck off."
Yeah,
sue me, please.
On a human level, I think he's entitled to voice his grievances, which is what he's done every week, and it irritates me.
Yeah, exactly.
I am curious to hear, how much blame he's going to throw on the management because, look, every ex-employee of Milan so far this year has said negative things, and current employees say it behind people's back. It's no secret that the way the club is ran right now is bad, and there's a lot of drama going on. So, yeah, I will be curious to hear it and how he views it impacts it, because he's going to blame that. He's not going to say it's him. Of course, we know that. So take everything with a grain of salt, but I am curious to hear it and say, if he says something like, "Oh, Furlani instructed me to do this, but then Zlatan said I had to do this, and so I settled on this because I didn't know what to do." probably bullshit because it doesn't sound like he's the type of guy who's gonna try to appease everyone, obviously. But I feel like there will be, sprinkles of truth in
Something
that.
like that, yeah. But also, like, we signed our most expensive striker ever, I think, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's been injured the past couple weeks, but, or he had an injury.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, that's what
like,
he blamed it on it today, right?
you can't.
Yeah, he's had some further stuff to feed the.
We gave him the
I'll walk it
investment.
back. I'll walk it back a little bit. Yeah, we gave him 5 signings in the January window. I can't remember a manager being.
We've never backed
like
someone like that.
No, I know, and he might come out. That's what I would be interested to listen to is because there was like an obligation after that January window that we had to get top 4. If he were to come out and say I only asked for one of those players or whatever, then that would be something that I'd like to hear because it would prove to us that there's no cohesion between the management level and the coaching staff. But yeah, let's wrap up Atalanta. Shit game follows a theme of the season. We've lost 10 in the league now. Something that hasn't happened since 2019-20, which obviously started disastrously under Marco Giampaolo. It's back to sort of banter era stuff, is that. And my man of the match is going to be, don't know, who even played well.
They're all shit. Reiner's going to complete a pass. Fofana started off hot in the first half and then became dog shit.
The long range. I mean, I've seen a lot of I think Fofana's performance was divisive because they were praising him on the TV channel, but I agree that it became progressively frustrating as the game went on. And my God, some of those shots from distance from him and Reinders is just like, what is going on? There has to be another way. With Reinders, you don't mind him taking it on because he scored a couple like that in the past, but he had 2 opportunities and lifted them both into the second tier. I don't know about a man in the match, to be honest.
I'm going to pick someone who is... sorry, were you just not picking someone? Is that what you settled on?
Yeah, I'm not picking anyone for now.
Okay. I'm basically doing the same, but I am picking a player who is not the man of any match. But the point I'm making here is he's the only player who was not stagnant in his motions, who, at least when he came on and got the ball, tried to make stuff happen. Not very well. In fact, I hate this player. But Joao Felix. He at least tried to play a game. It was his game.
That's because
so it was awful.
He does try. It's just he tries as a team of one.
Exactly. He's selfish. I don't like his attitude. I don't like his play style. But when everyone was standing still and we're down a goal and we just need a counter against a team who, let's be real, was allowing us to. Atalanta was not doing anything. And he was the only one who tried to make passing lanes, try to do a little flick or something. Only I had 3 we were counting. All of them failed. But yeah, I'm giving it to Joao Felix. Don't get used to it. It'll never happen again.
I'm impressed. Yeah. Honestly, I was looking at the man of the match scores, and I was just going to go based off of that. So because of that, I'm just not going to pick anyone because that's not a fair way to give it out. It's just like Fofana and Gabbia both have a 7.1, but I'm not going to just do it because of that.
I was going to say Gabbia. I think he did an okay job in the middle of the 3 against a lethal attack. They scored a lot of goals. I thought Pavlovic regressed a little bit, and I thought Tomori was up and down, but I just noticed Tomori got Isaac's highest score with the 6.5.
Yeah, I didn't think Tomori was that bad, to be honest.
The flop for me is Leao, clearly. He was away twice. I know people are talking about that offside decision being wrong, and that's correct to point out that the linesman flagged incorrectly. However, the player was allowed to carry on, We still reached the end of that passage. It wasn't blown dead at the halfway line. And if that had have led to a goal, it would have been given because they'd have reviewed it. So it's not an excuse. It was a chance that was messed up. And then he goes in behind. And again, it just shows where he's at the moment, especially at home. It's nearly a year since he scored a home league goal. That's not on. That's just not acceptable. And there was also a chance in the second half where we combined beautifully down the right side. And Tomori, of all people, gets to the byline to put a cross in. Nobody's waiting to put it in, and Leao's run at the far post was way too late. And I think it was Fonseca who came in and said he needs to be making more of those runs, make use of his size and his speed to get on the end of more deep crosses, and that would have been a tap in, but he was way too late to react to it. So I'm going to go with him.
I'm going to go with Luka Jovic. We've seen it a million times. If he starts or if he plays in a one-man attack, or one striker formation, he flops. He had one shot the entire game. It was, in my opinion, the one that was the most clear-cut chance at a goal, and it was off target. It was a great chance. Everyone thought, oh, no, it's going in, but it was off target at the end of the day. He can't be starting games from the first minute. You gave him 75. I thought 60 was generous. At 60 minutes, he didn't even have that shot on target. I think he might have had 10 touches on the ball at that point. He shouldn't be starting. I don't know if Tammy's still hurt, but if you're not starting Santiago Jimenez, it needs to be Tammy Abraham that you're starting. Yes, he's a dry loan, but Luka Jovic is a guy who's also leaving this summer, probably on a free, like he was bought. When you buy a guy on a free, when he has a year left on his contract, that tells you everything you need to know about what his original club thought of him. And when his performances have maintained that level, take a hint. He comes off the bench in a 2-striker formation, and he could poach a few. That's the only time he's useful. You can't start him. And Conceição has fallen for the same trap that Fonseca, well, I don't think he ever played under Fonseca, but that Pioli fell for as well. That, he comes on the bench, he scored immediately with 5 minutes a game. He did it 2 games in a row. We better start him. No, he's not a first-minute player anymore. He's not. He is a last-second poacher when you need goals and you throw on 3 strikers, 2 wingers, an attacking midfielder, and you just throw balls over the top. He will get you a goal in that scenario. But instead, you play him from the first minute. You give him an hour and 15 minutes. He does nothing. He's exhausted. Now you have to take him off and put on 2 strikers who are designed to play in lone striker formations. And they don't have the coercions, and it's a mess every time. So Luka Jovic, but also I'm complaining about Conceição.
I was also going to pick him as well, but everything that AJ said, plus you play him in a defensive-minded formation, it is bound to fail. So, I
just don't think he has the size to play as a lone centre forward. Like, there was a few times when we tried to use him as the out ball, and do you know what? I'll give him a bit of credit because he tried with his hold-up play, like other strikers that we've had, and some wingers that we've had, etc., have just gone to ground in those situations. He at least sort of puts himself. The problem is he's not a very big body to put in there, and it don't work.
There was a chance, I think, when I believe it was Pulisic put in a cross over the top, and he was alone in, and he just was too small. If it was a guy Abraham size, I think he could at least got a touch on the ball. I don't know if he would have scored because it's Tammy, but it ended up missing him and going straight to Karnaseki. But yeah, he's just too small. And to Madison's point, in this formation, a lot of his touches came in our half. So
yeah, says a lot, really. Let's move on then and preview the inter-game semi-final second leg, of course, at San Siro on Wednesday night. 1-1 after the first leg. Tammy Abraham scored, and then Çalhanoğlu equalised. Inter are the home team for this second leg. You can have your own assessments on whether that makes a big difference or not. Nothing that we've done this season has inspired any confidence in me that we can go and get the job done here, apart from our strange derby record.
I was going to say, but we have a good record against them this season.
Yeah, that's the one shining light from an otherwise dreadful campaign, has been that we've gone 4 unbeaten. It might be 5th time unlucky or whatever, but it's finally poised, and I think Inter are a team that, there's been, after they beat Bayern Munich, in the Italian media, there was rightly a lot of talk about, is this a team that can go on and win the treble? But then they go and lose at Bologna, and now it's like, what if they end the season trophyless? Because, they're back level on points with Napoli. Barca will be tough in the semi-finals, and they could realistically continue their derby hoodoo against us. But I don't see it happening. I'm not all confident, is what I'm trying to say, despite everything.
More confidence in this match than the others, simply because this is realistically the only competition we're in.
Yeah.
I would much rather finish 9th than in a conference league spot, and winning the cup is another trophy, one we haven't won in a while, and it at least gets us Europa, which is another pathway to Champions League next season, which at this point we need as many paths as possible. I do think that will motivate the players, and I think Conceição's only motivation is to end this season and say, I won 2 trophies with the worst Milan ever, even though a lot of it is his fault.
He created it. Nah.
Yeah. But another thing that gives us hope, Zielinski, Thuram, Dumfries, all missing this game.
Mm.
So there's that. Now, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, Pope passed away. His funeral is on Saturday. So what was going to be Inter versus Roma on Saturday has been postponed, date unknown. So that means that they now can go all out against us. They don't have to worry about being rested for a league head-to-head, which is a huge game in the league, especially given the table, especially considering Roma have not lost in 2025 in the league.
Mm.
And that was kind of the big asterisk to this, was how will Inter manage both competitions back to back like that, knowing that they also have Barca next week. So I do think their schedule and what I saw from them this past weekend against Bologna, they look tired. They look really tired. And now
They
players
do.
are dropping. Big name players who have good injury records are dropping. And that's something that they really need to worry about. And I don't know. Something tells me that they're going to get in their heads on this, knowing that we've now been 4 unbeaten against them this season. Yeah, they've come from behind in 2 of them to equalize, but we came from behind in the one that mattered the most, the Super Cup final, and won it. We were 2-0 down. We came back and won that. The opener, we just beat them. Just clean beat. I think they're going to be more in their heads about this than we will. I don't know if it'll be enough. I wouldn't be surprised if this goes straight to penalties and we lose it on penalties.
I'd be
It's a
so pissed if
lottery
we
then.
lost on penalties.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I'll be pissed if we lose regardless, but on penalties,
Yeah.
Only once.
If we look
as,
like shit and lose on penalties, I'll be like, But if,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Only once has a derby in any competition gone to extra time, and we won it. It was the Cutrone goal, which was
Cup
the
semi.
Coppa Italia quarter final.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's I think there are a lot of mitigating factors on both sides that actually make this more even than the bookmakers, for example, will make it for everything that you've just mentioned there. And I think for all the talk of Inter potentially winning multiple trophies this season, I don't think they're anywhere close to the level of last season. For example, if we had our points total from last season at this point this season, we'd be top. Like, Inter are not even at the pace that we were last season, and we finished second. They of course the points total they got last year was going to be very, very hard to replicate. But they've been sucked right back into the Scudetto battle. Obviously, they've got to try and manage energy for that semi-final in the Champions League. This game is probably the lowest priority for them at the moment. However, with that Roma game being moved, they can now commit a bit more energy to it. And then the final's a one-off game against Bologna, a team that they'll probably want a bit of revenge against. I think that there are so many subplots to this particular tie that it could be a belter, but I expect it to be incredibly cagey with both sets of players knowing that one mistake could define the season. Because if Inter lose this, I wonder if they might go on a bit of a spiral. Even though they care more about other stuff, I'm sure they do. But the doubts will really creep in if they lose again to this Milan team. Whereas with us, I get it. We can say the pressure's off a little bit, but also I think the pressure is incredibly on. Like this is the only way that we can salvage a little bit of the season. We have got that one trophy, but it feels so long ago now. And
it's also like a 10 Cup trophy, to be honest. It's like, about the Super Cup.
We won it in Saudi Arabia. This would be a completely different thing. We haven't won the Coppa Italia in over 20 years, which is a disgrace for a club of with our trophy cabinet. And yeah, look, even if we did get through against this, I'd fancy Bologna in the final. If that was versus us, but you've got to give yourself the shot. You've got to print your name on the ticket before you start thinking about that. And yeah, I don't know. I think he should and probably will stick with the 3-man defense for this. Yeah. But I'm worried about it for the same reason as against Atalanta. I think you're coming up against a team that plays a very similar system, especially in build-up, and they've been doing it for an awful lot longer. And if you look at the results this season, we've always played a 4-man defense and not lost to them. I don't.
The difference between our 3-4-3 and Inter's 3 whatever. When Inter has someone on the ball, you always see someone from the next line up, be it the defender has the ball, a midfielder drops back to open a lane if they don't have the long pass. If a midfielder has the ball, an attacker drops back to open a lane for the long pass. They'll always do that. You will always see movement. Against Atalanta, we saw none of that. When we got the ball, we all stood still and said, pick me this time. And no one made an effort to get open, to create openings. When you look at Tammy Abraham's goal, I believe it was against Inter, the reason that was possible was because Pulisic made the run, which drew a defender, which allowed Fofana to make the pass, and Tammy was open in on goal. We saw zero movement against Atalanta. Now, if that was a part of the game plan, give me heads on a stake. That's not okay. You can't be doing that. If that was just malaise from the players and not caring, also give me heads on a stake, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't have anything positive.
Please.
But the point being, that's something that hopefully the coaching staff has recognized and say, hey guys, this isn't what we do. We need movement. This is Inter we're playing. You want to win a trophy? Let's move. Let's run. This is football. It's not a stagnant sport. We're not resetting after each play. It's not 1st and 10. This is just play. You got 45 minutes, play. So I need to see more movement. And until I see that, and I haven't really seen it much this season, I can't have faith in the players or the management or the coach. I need wholesale changes. And I don't know, the negativity, the dark cloud of evil is just consuming me here. I'm not a happy camper.
Tutor Sports said that San Siro was an icy and grey cathedral on Sunday.
Oh, well, what's funny is I woke up this morning to my mom now on Instagram and sent me a DM of an AI video of San Siro collapsing. And she goes, was this real?
Was this real?
I wish. Yeah, maybe we can use that for a social slot later. Cheers. I'm just looking here at Inter's predicted starting lineup. Obviously, this might be a bit more up in the air now. They're not playing on Saturday. I guess the plans may change a little bit. But Sommer in goal, obviously. Bishek, De Vrij, and Bastoni, the back three. Damian, Fratesi, Çalhanoğlu, Mkhitaryan, Carlos Augusto as the five across the middle. Then Lautaro and Arnautovic up front. You made a good point there about Inter's movement when they've got the ball. Their wing backs always cause us a load of shit because normally you have a striker or a midfielder drop, as you mentioned, and then somebody goes, be it the other striker or usually the wing back. We really struggle with those switches of play. So if we do match them up in terms of formation, it would be interesting to see how Jimenez and Teo cope with that because their defensive prowess has not been the best so far this season.
I'll be honest, if every time we have matched their formation, we have lost, right?
Well, Pioli did it, didn't he? And it did not end well.
It didn't go well. Did Fonseca do it at the beginning of the season?
No, he played a 4-4-2, like a 4-4-1-1.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was like a bit of a chameleonic type thing. That was a really good game from us,
It was.
I think we need to look back at that and rewatch it and see what worked so well with it. But
maybe have Conceição watch it.
Players,
like,
yeah,
not it was a 4-2-3-1.
4-2. Okay.
Hey, it was Emerson Royale. He's the key.
I'm going to say players have come and gone.
You know what?
We can't play Morata 10. And he did.
Morata was a 10 in that. Yeah,
Morata played in behind it. Yeah, and we can't do that anymore because he's not here. But
how's he doing in Turkey? Do you guys know?
Not very
he's
well.
Injured,
I don't think he's injured. Yeah. I think he's only scored like a couple of times. But yeah, our team is down as Maignan, Tomori, Gabia, Pavlovic as the three, Jimenez, Fofana, Reinders, Teo as the four across the middle, Pulisic, Tammy, and Leao, which I think makes a lot of sense. I just wonder if there'll be a temptation to play Walker on the right side but I don't think Tomori's done enough to be benched.
No, but would you play Walker instead of Jimenez? Instead of Tomori?
I would play Kyle Walker over Jimenez.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Do you know we have a really good wing back out on loan? Salamakers would be decent.
Don't ever say that name to me when I'm
Salamakers and Kalulu would be incredible in this.
Kalulu for sure.
Yeah.
I'm being dead serious. If you had Salamakers as the wing back and you had Kalulu as the third center back, unstoppable.
We're talking about a second star.
Third star.
Is I don't have any loan with an option? Or did we actually?
Yeah, they're going to buy him for 40 million permanently. I don't have any objections with that.
14.
Yeah,
14.
1-4.
What?
1-4. Yeah.
Disgusting.
Who negotiated that deal?
Verlani.
What an
Pure capital
idiot.
gains there.
I know, bro.
I've no problems with the leaked team there. To be honest, I don't think we can play anyone different in the midfield double pivot. For example, I don't think that you would rip up the defense. I've been campaigning all season for us to stick with the defensive unit, and I wouldn't change it. And the front three, I agree with Tammy coming in for Jovic. There may be a temptation to start Santi Jimenez just to try spring a bit of a surprise if he is back to full fitness. But I think Tammy's the derby man, isn't he? So you got to chuck him in.
He's done very well in the derby this season.
Predictions then. I think we lose 2-0. I'll get the negativity out the way. I can see it being a bit like the Atalanta game.
I don't know. I'm going 0-0, lose on penalties.
I think we win 3-2. High scoring.
Yeah.
Who's going to score? Who's going to score?
Own goal.
No. I'll say
own goal.
Pulisic, Reinders, and Liao.
Hope you're right, mate, because I'd have to get some tickets booked to Rome.
Maybe we can get what the hell's his name? I can't believe. Who's the guy who bets in the chat?
Oh, Ivan.
Yeah, Ivan. Let's get Ivan on the podcast and talk to him about it.
Yeah, if we go, you could do like a tipster section. But if we go behind and he lumps on us to win, then it'll happen. So we need to figure.
What I've discovered, unfortunately, the hard way is he can't tell us he did it. Like he did for Atalanta, and I tailed it, and then I lost $10 and the game. But every time he bets when we lose, when we're behind, we come back and win. But he doesn't.
Ivan wins crazy money on AC Milan.
If we go behind
in general,
if we go behind against Inter and he hasn't put anything about a bet in the chat, we're looking pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, all right. Okay, let's do Venezia then. That's an awful game, by the way. Time. It's the early slot on Sunday. So
yeah,
it's
so
12:30.
What's going to happen is we're going to beat Inter and then lose to Venezia 1-0.
I wouldn't give a shit. I'd take that. I'd sign up for that right now. Like, honestly, we could lose 4-0 at Venezia and I wouldn't care.
Is it even possible for us to not finish 9th? Or 11 points? Yeah, okay, technically.
Yeah, but we can't finish any lower, which is a bit of a... we're 11 points clear.
Oh, we could finish 12th. Oh, we could finish 14.
Come on, 11-point gap. If we're talking that we can finish 10th, then we should be talking that we can finish 4th. Venezia are in the bottom three. They've only won 4 out of 33 games this season. They've only scored 27 goals and they've let in 46. Them, Empoli and Monza occupy the bottom 3 at the moment, but Venezia and Empoli are just a point from safety. So this is a massive game for them. Absolutely massive. So they'll be well up for it. And we probably won't. And I think that that's something to consider. But yeah, the results this season, not so good. I don't want them to go down because I've still not managed to make the trip over yet to watch a game there.
Are they getting a new stadium too?
Yeah, supposedly building it on another island out there, I think. But yeah,
what a shame it would be to book a trip to go to Venezia away and have it canceled.
I know, man. This is what I've been saying for a long time. They have won one game in 2025, which was a 1-0 win over Monza, who were pretty much already relegated.
It's written in the stars.
Yeah, I don't like this. They've had some 0-0 draws in there. They kept it tight. They for example, they drew 0-0 with Lazio, 22nd of Feb, 0-0 away at Atalanta on the 1st of March, and then 0-0 against Napoli on the 16th of March. So they can find it. They can make the top teams sweat, and they can frustrate them. They also drew 0-0 with Fiorentina. They only lost 1-0 to Inter, lost 1-0 to Roma, lost 1-0 to Bologna. So they've not really had a pasting from anybody, to be honest. That's why I think that they're going to make life hard for us.
Yeah, this is a good opportunity for us to actually jump into 8th because Empoli are going to play Fiorentina, and it's a must-win for both Venezia and Empoli. A must-win for Venezia means it's going to be a bit more open than the Atalanta game, and that 3-4-3 might actually work this time with 0 movement because Venezia is so bad. I think we could actually win this now. Is Fiorentina going to lose to Empoli? Doubt it.
That's
But
a derby as well, so
yeah,
there'll be extra
Fiorentina
up for
wins
it.
it. Yeah, I think we actually do get this one, and I think it's going to look good, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh, okay, we're settling in." I think it'll be 2-0, and it'll be our last win of the season.
Ooh. I think we're going to lose 1-0, and it will be one of our many losses to remain.
I don't even know who else we play after this. Yeah, it might actually be.
We got some
to be
tough
honest.
games. We got Bologna and Roma, haven't we? Still.
Yeah.
Well, if we play Bologna, if we win against Inter, we'll have two more
Bologna games to lose.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Have they beaten us twice already this season?
Only once.
Or
We've
once?
only played them once. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was the game in hand that got rescheduled.
Yeah.
Injuries wise,
is that when we were close to top 4?
Yeah, a win there would have put us in the top 4. Yeah.
Late winner from Ndai, wasn't it? They deserved it though. They battered us, to be fair.
Yeah, they did. They played very
Venezia have Svoboda out with a ligament injury. Stankovic, goalkeeper, out with a tendon tear. That sounds nasty. And the right back, Richie Sagrado, is out with a muscle problem. Not sure when he's returning. And their top goal contributor this season is Hans Caviglia, who has 6 goal contributions.
He'd be a great addition to our team. I think I picked him in that bonus podcast.
Yeah, I picked that. Jay is Idzez, who is 1 game away from a suspension according to this, but it won't matter.
He'd actually be the best free kick taker, I think, on our team if we signed him.
I like him, me. I think that's a good shout. He's only 24 as well. There's some potential there with him. But yeah, for their top man in terms of goal contributions to have 6, it says a lot about their struggle to score goals. They've got only 1 player as well who has started over 30 games for them, and that is Jay Idzes, the centre back. So they've clearly been chopping and changing quite a lot this season. What's my prediction? 1-1. I think we have to come from behind to get a draw late on. Just don't fancy us at all.
I think that's worse than a loss, to be honest.
Early kickoff on a Sunday as well, by the way. Early kickoffs, you know what we're like.
I promise you I'm not watching. I'm going to sleep.
I was going to say, I guarantee you that's why I'm not going to watch this game.
I won't be there no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they don't go down. But it's what it is. I feel like they've come up twice now and not really given it much of a go in terms of the recruitment, but Sassuolo are coming back up, so I don't really give a shit about what's happening in Serie B. All right. What are we looking at? We've got time for 1. Right, let me quickly check the Twitter because the one that I got from the Discord is really long. We got 5 replies on Twitter.
Any good ones?
Okay. Delusional Rossonero, aren't we all? Why does everyone believe the management will invest in the summer and go for targets like Samuele Ricci for 40 mil plus or Arcelini, 30 mil with current form? Aren't you afraid that the mediocrity will be even more encouraged with mediocre signings and some of the current stars leaving?
Doesn't sound very delusional. Sounds very pessimistic.
I was going to say that sounds pretty likely because we're not making top 4, so we're not going to see the investment that we want.
I don't think they're mediocre players, though.
No, he wasn't saying those were.
Oh,
he's saying that it will downgrade from that level of target to like players who are 15 mil, instead of the 30, 40 mil targets.
I really hope we don't sign mediocre players because we've done such a good job of like recruiting better talent that it's just gonna be such a huge step back. Like, don't let this season determine the next 5 years. Use it as a bouncing block to bounce back up, not stay mediocre.
Yeah,
agreed. Yeah,
I think if the ownership, and I'm not saying that they won't do this, by the way, because it wouldn't surprise me if I heard that this was the plan. But say the ownership say, okay, we're getting 60 million less in revenues because we've not made the Champions League. The punishment is you've got 60 million less budget for the summer transfer window. That is a fucking problem because I don't think we can operate like that. You know, I think then our net spend would have to be so low that we'd have to see at least one star leave and a big star that commands a fee of 40 million plus, really. And we know that there's only a couple of candidates for that. But I don't. My gut feeling is that doesn't happen. My gut feeling is that if we're bringing in a new sporting director and head coach, it's to try and start a new era. Now, I know people are going to say, what about the Fonseca era? What about the Conceição era? Blah, blah, blah. I get that. But if we're really committing to this like back to Italian identity thing with a director who knows the league, a coach who knows the league, they're going to have to be backed with players that they know can do well in the league. Therefore, there has to be changes in the squad. Therefore, they have to have been promised a bit of budget to do it. Otherwise, you won't take the job. I think like you can work backwards from, oh, well, they've decided to come, so there must be something in it for them. You know, if Allegri comes, people would moan and say a very defensive manager, etc. But he'd be putting his rep on the line by coming back to us, really, knowing that this could be his last big job. So if we get him through the door, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It might be that we're willing to be ambitious and back his ideas.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really interesting question because it is literally that balancing act of we've done worse, let's invest more to fill the gap that emerged this season, or we've done worse, that gap must be eaten by the budget.
Yeah, that's the likelihood path that I see us taking, but I also don't consider the Fonseca and Conceição era. I consider an era when a coach has more than one season.
I think that's fair. But I think the attempt to start an era is what I was saying. Like, I think we saw Fonseca as a multi-year coach.
We can consider it as the post-Pioli era for now.
Yeah.
And then see, you know, like you could have one really bad year in it. Like you look at Napoli post-Scudetto era, they had one really bad year and they're probably going to win a second Scudetto a year later, you know? And it's because they made all the right investments over the summer. They had that bad year. They didn't say, okay, now we have to start over. They said, okay, let's build on what we did wrong and make it correct. So they got in the winning manager. They got in the high value targets. Yeah, they sold their stars, but that was going to happen regardless because they said vocally they wanted out, but they built something and they replaced it. Whereas Milan, I don't know if we're going to do that. You know, up until yesterday, there were 4 living owners of AC Milan. One of them died this morning. And it was the guy who got us relegated in the 80s. So now Jerry Cardinale has the unfortunate title of worst owner alive for AC Milan right now. So
what's the guy who died?
Change that.
I think I mean, I don't
it
know.
Wasn't the Pope.
I think he was the president who died, not the owner at the time.
I thought it was the owner. I thought it was the guy who
might have been the owner
Silvio
as well, but like President Berlusconi was also the owner, but it was technically Fininvest and what have you. But yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, you're right. It was not the best era that he was in charge of, but of course, rest in peace because he is a club figure. Yeah, just a final thing before we wrap it up. Level on points, Napoli and Inter. Do you want to see it go to a playoff, or would you rather Napoli just storm away with it now?
Yeah.
Oh, Napoli storm away for sure.
It's a good opportunity for them right now, especially with the rescheduled game, because what that's going to do is give Inter the game in hand, and they're going to know, do we have to win or not? And as we've seen historically, when they have a game in hand, they bottle it every single time.
Bologna.
Every time. Yeah. So, yeah, I would much rather them run away with it, especially knowing that both games they played were 1-1 draws, and it was Napoli coming from behind late to secure those draws. I don't see them being able to pull it off in a one-off match. One thing Conte's always struggled with is cup ties. He's never been able to go far in the Champions League.
That's true.
I wouldn't imagine him to do well in a one-off, whereas Inzaghi, he is a cup manager. So, yeah, I'd much rather Napoli just run away with it now while they had the chance.
They've before I was really low on Napoli's chances. You know, when Inter took that 3-point lead, I thought they were clicking into gear at the right time, and Napoli had fallen off when they won. They went 5 games without a win from start of Feb to start of March, but they've now won 4 in 6. So, and they're not conceding many goals at all. And I think that you're in and around that sort of trajectory that we were when we beat Inter to the title, where like they've just completely shored up the defense, and they're gonna. I mean, looking at their remaining fixtures: Torino at home, Lecce away, Genoa at home, Parma away, Cagliari at home. There is no excuse for them not winning at least 4 of those games, and I think that'll be enough. I think that would probably be enough to do it for them. But it could be fascinating if we do go to a playoff, whatever you call it. Be the first one ever to decide a title in a top 5
It'd be
European
fun to
league.
see.
Yeah, it would. But I do also back into in that game, as AJ said.
Yeah.
Wrap it up there. Thank you very much for listening to us waffle for an hour about this shit football club. Appreciate it. And if you treat it as counselling too, then let us know what you think in the comments. In the meantime, I've been your host, Ollie Fisher. Find me on Twitter at Ollie Fisher. AJ, cheers for joining.
Yep. See you guys for the bonus.
Maddie, cheers for joining. Have a good week, everyone.